Hello there. Welcome to the Sports Ballers Podcast. I'm Corey Puffett, and I'm excited to be hosting this 274th episode because it's been an exciting week in sports. We had a 20-minute delay in the women's SEC championship game after a fight broke out. NFL teams are going bananas as free agency officially opens. And this week, we preview the Central divisions in Major League Baseball. We'll be back on the other side of the music. Hello and welcome to the Sports Ballers Podcast. I'm Corey Puffett, your host for this week, and I am joined tonight by the one and only Evan Ash. How are you doing tonight, Evan?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Our regular listeners will immediately notice that somebody is absent. Eric is not with us tonight. He had a medical procedure earlier this week. He's doing very well, recovering, but figured that with all of our hilarity that we tend to get into, the hijinks that we have on the show, it would probably be in his best interest not to be in a situation where he might laugh because it would become very uncomfortable for him. So he's sitting out this week's show, but he will be back to host next week's show when we preview the American League and National League West divisions. On tonight's show, we'll be talking about the two Central divisions, arguably two of the most boring divisions in all of sports.
Yes.
But we will nonetheless be breaking down those 10 teams, talking about some of their offseason moves, what we expect from them this year. We'll talk some NFL free agency news because there was a lot of that this past week. Yesterday was the first day of the new league year, which is when teams could officially begin signing and even just offering those contracts, but conversations were able to happen during the week leading up to that point. So we already knew a lot of the moves that were going to be made official between yesterday and today. So we'll get into some of those, the most pertinent ones. But I want to start tonight with college basketball. We've been doing what we can over the last several months to keep everybody updated on how some of the top teams have been performing. Well, now we are coming close to tournament time. We are just a few days away. Selection Sunday is in 3 days. And at that point, we will find out the 68 teams that will make up the men's NCAA tournament bracket, the 68 teams that will make up the women's bracket. We'll get a chance to make all of our picks for the tournaments, which is going to be very exciting. We'll be doing that next week. We actually just opened up our 2024 bracket challenges today. We are hosting those on ESPN as we have the last few years. We posted the links to our Facebook and X accounts this afternoon around 6 p.m. So if you would like to join our bracket challenge, please head over there, find those links. Again, posted them around 6 p.m. on Thursday, the 14th, Pi Day, by the way. And get in there and be ready to make your picks after Selection Sunday. But Evan, we're going to start on the men's side, which apparently has actually been getting worse ratings on Fox this season than the women's game, which is not undeserved, but a little bit surprising because so many people still like to hate on the women's game. But the women's game is better these days.
The women's game is better than it used to be, and it's also better than the men's game.
Yes.
It's more entertaining. There's more stories. You've heard of these people.
Yes.
There's continuity from last year.
That's a big thing.
Yeah. So whereas the men's game, everybody's there for a year, and then they either transfer or attempt to go to the NBA, or they just disappear.
Yeah. No, I mean that's exactly it. So we'll talk a little bit about the men's game. The local team, Eric's Maryland Terrapins, finished the season 16-16. I don't think there's any chance that they are getting a call on Selection Sunday. They did beat Rutgers by 14 yesterday in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. That ensured that they would not finish under 500. But they got blown out by 31 points today against Wisconsin.
Oh, they cut it to 31 because it was 80 to 40.
It was 80 to 40 at one point. That is true. Yeah, so they did cut it to 31. It's pretty sad when you can actually look at that as a positive. A little bit of spin there. Evan, your Yellow Jackets, you want to take a crack at what their final record was?
Well, it says here 14 and 18.
I wasn't sure if you were actually looking at the sheet or not. Yes, 14
Yes.
and 18, an 84 to 80 loss to Notre Dame on Tuesday in the first round of the ACC tournament.
In the first game.
Yes.
Why are we always in the first game and lose? Right?
You're going to have to answer that one for me, Evan.
I don't know. I feel like we're always in the first game at 2:00 on Tuesday with dozens of people watching, and we just get bounced. It's like, were we even in the ACC tournament? Not really.
That depends, I guess. If the first round is considered the same as the first four, I don't consider the teams that lose in those games to actually be in the NCAA tournament.
Well, there's only 3 games the first day. So what about the first 3, you know?
Looking around some other conference championships in the men's game because, believe it or not, some of them are actually over. All the big ones are still going on. They have their championships either on Saturday or a couple of conferences do them on Sunday. But the Stetson Hatters will be making their first ever NCAA tournament appearance. They beat Austin Peay 94 to 91 in the Atlantic Sun Championship. I have never heard of the Stetson Hatters. Have you, Evan?
I think I've heard of Stetson as a school, not just Stetson Bennett the Fourth, but I had no idea their nickname was the Hatters.
Yeah, no idea. But congratulations to them. They'll be dancing for the first time ever. That's a big deal. Meanwhile, Wagner beat Merrimack by 7 in the Northeast Conference Championship. Montana State beat Montana by 15 in the Big Sky Championship. Wagner is 16 and 15 after that game. Montana State improved to 500, 17 and 17. So pending some other conferences that are still playing, those two could end up as the teams with the worst records entering the NCAA tournament. Wagner's making its second appearance ever, its first since 2003, while Montana State is actually making its third straight appearance in the Big Dance. So congratulations to those teams.
Mm-hmm. The Northeast Conference and the Big Sky Conference.
Yes.
Corey, what state is Stetson in?
I was hoping that you would be able to tell me, but I can look it up real quick.
Well, no, I want you to guess because I just looked it
Oh,
up. I have no idea.
Okay, so I won't actually type it in then.
Yeah. You got a 1 out of 50
so
chance.
It's the Atlantic Sun Conference. I mean, I know Austin Peay, I'm pretty sure, is in Texas. I'm just gonna guess Texas.
It is in Florida.
Okay.
In DeLand, Florida.
All right. Interesting. Moving on to the women's game, and I just looked it up. I am wrong. Austin Peay is in Tennessee, not Texas. So I was wrong anyway on that.
That'd be Stephen F. Austin. Then.
Right. Yes. There you go. That's the one I'm thinking of. On the women's side, the Lady Terps may have kept their tournament hopes alive, may even have secured a spot in the Big Dance, because on Friday they knocked off the top seed in the Big Ten tournament, an 8-1 upset against number 4 Ohio State. They won going away 82 to 61. At one point they had like a 50 to 30, I believe, rebound advantage late in the game. So Terps played great on Friday. And then they stumbled on Saturday, lost by 10 to Nebraska. They had only been down by 1 at the end of the third quarter, so just a really rough fourth quarter. I believe the deficit in that quarter alone was something like 9 to 19 against the Terps. That was the semifinal of the Big Ten tournament, but making it to that point, knocking off a top 5 team in the country, the number 1 seed in the tournament. Maryland, I believe, going into the Big Ten tournament was on that like last 4 buys bubble, and they were like the last team. So they were one of those teams that could potentially end up having to play in the first 4 as an 11 seed hopeful. At this point, they likely have secured a spot in the actual field of 64. So that was a big win for them. but they're not going to be seeded highly enough to get a home game in the first 2 rounds, so they will have to go on the road.
Okay.
Evan, your Lady Jackets season is over. 17-14, the final record, but 7-11 in ACC play, so not very good chance of getting an at-large bid for the tourney. You all beat Pittsburgh by 13 in the first round of the conference tournament, so they did better than the men.
And they did better than the Ravens, too.
Yeah.
They didn't beat Pittsburgh either.
That's true. And they lost to Duke by 12 in the second round on Friday. So
not great.
Yeah. So a lot of conferences have already completed their tournaments on the women's side. There are a few conferences still playing, but they're small conferences. They are not the major Division I conferences. So the Big Ten tournament is over. Iowa beat Nebraska 94-89 in an overtime thriller. Caitlin Clark got off to an absolutely horrid start in that game, but wound up really coming alive late. Still scored over 30 points in that contest and helped lead her team back into the game and then to an overtime win. In the ACC tournament, Notre Dame beat NC State 55-51. NC State, we've talked about on the show in the last couple of weeks. They've been struggling a bit, losing to some unseeded teams, so just another one of those. In the Pac-12, USC beat Stanford. It was a little bit of a shocker, not so much that USC won the game because both of these teams are good. Both these teams have beaten and lost to high-ranking teams. The Pac-12 was just fantastic in terms of the level of competition on the women's side this year. But the fact that USC won by 13 against a really good Stanford team was a little bit of a surprise. I was watching that game after the SEC championship, which we're going to get to. I skipped over that in our notes, but I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Okay. In the Big East tournament, UConn beat Georgetown, and they absolutely demolished them, 78-42. Yikes. I always like to see Georgetown lose, and I love to see them lose by 46. They got or 36. There's the old Corey Puffett math for our long-term fans.
It's not old. It's just...
In the Big 12, Texas beat Iowa State 70-53. R.I.P. my Cyclones. And other conference of note in the Ohio Valley Conference, the University of Texas Martin will represent the conference with a 16-16 record after losing in the conference title game by 28 points to Southern Indiana. The reason? The Southern Indiana Screaming Eagles are in the Division I transition period and so are ineligible for the tournament. So we've got a team that lost in their conference championship game, went 16-16 in a mid-major, is going to be going to the NCAA tournament on the men's side. Give me just one more reason why the women's game is better. I don't understand the transition period, to be frank. I understand it if you are moving down from Division I to Division II or Division II to Division III. That makes total sense because you're coming from a higher caliber of play, you would assume. And yes. So, maybe there should be a transition period where, if you have players that have been used to playing on a Division I stage, they shouldn't get to go down and beat up on a Division II teams and make it to the tournament. I would get that. But if you're moving up to a higher tier division, or at least what is supposed to be a higher tier division, why are you being penalized for doing well?
I mean, the NCAA makes stupid rules all the time. This is what they do. So this serves no purpose.
Makes no sense. Going back to the SEC championship game, this is one we got to talk about a little bit. South Carolina kept their unbeaten season going. I believe they're now 30. They're either 31-0 or 32-0. They've been fantastic once again. Did the same thing that they did last year, where they went undefeated in the regular season, went undefeated in the conference tournament. They did ultimately lose in the Final Four last year, but against LSU, the defending national champion, by the way, South Carolina wins 79-71. But the headline of that game was the 20-minute delay with a little over 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. South Carolina and LSU got into a little bit of a kerfuffle, if you will.
A hullabaloo.
Yes. It was entirely South Carolina's fault. It was specifically Uh, man, I've got to try and remember her name. She was actually the leading scorer for South Carolina in the game, and I am trying to remember her name,
I have no idea.
and it is not coming to me right now. It's like, what's that called? Caldona, but that's not it. I'm gonna look it up and find it.
I'll look it up.
Uh, anyway, no, here we go. Cardoso, Camila Cardoso. I was almost close.
You were almost close.
She pushed down one of LSU's guards. Small girl, much smaller than Cardoso is. Cardoso is pretty tall. She's at least 6'6".
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's a tall girl. And the girl that she pushed down, I don't think that she could have been, I don't know. She couldn't have been taller than like 5'10", 5'11". Cardoso had a good half foot at least on her, and probably more than that. Just came up and shoved Flau'jae Johnson to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And then all hell broke loose. Both benches cleared. I think there was one girl who did not leave the bench area and so did not get thrown out of the game, and that was a girl for South Carolina. Which was fortunate because Cardoso got thrown out of the game. And so if it wasn't for that one player not leaving the bench, South Carolina might not have had enough players to finish the game 5-on-5. They might have had to give a power play to LSU to finish that game out.
Would they have to play 5-on-4, or did they just forfeit?
That's a great question. I honestly don't know what the rule would be in that situation. Maybe they would just have to forfeit. I don't know. We had the brother of a player enter the court. I believe that he's been charged criminally.
Trespassing?
Probably. He got down to the floor, I think, to try and push Cardoso, and then when he realized she's like 6'6", 6'7", he backed away, kind of ran away with his tail tucked between his legs. But just a wild scene in that game, and it took them 20 minutes to sort everything out. They were watching all of the footage over and over again to try and figure out who did leave the area, the bench area, who didn't, because when and if there is a fight that breaks out during a game between the players on the court, the bench players have to stay on the bench. They can't leave. So they were all ejected from the game. They'll be able to come back and play in the first round. Camila Cardoso, though, will not be playing in South Carolina's first game of the tournament. So fortunately for them, they're going to be playing against a 16 seed, and they should be just fine without her.
I mean, yeah, when you don't make the rules, you don't break the rules, right? But if it's a hard and fast rule that you can't leave the bench, if there's a little fight or mix up or something, and you're going to get ejected, then you're going to get ejected. I can't really argue against that.
Yeah. So that's where we're at with women's basketball. Again, a few other smaller conferences left to play to finish out their tournaments, but Selection Sunday just a few days away. So one more reminder to join our 2024 bracket challenges. Last year, I finished tied for second in the men's challenge behind somebody that I don't think we ever identified, Owls Fan 954. If you're out there, if you're listening to the show, please let us know that that's you so we can actually give you your credit for winning last year's bracket challenge. Congratulations on that. I also finished
your
third.
Your award is in the mail.
Yes, there you go. I finished third in the women's challenge behind, again, Owls Fan 954. He pulled a double. He won both of our bracket challenges last year, and we have no idea who this is. And another guy, King Graw 23, who I also don't. We might have found out who that was, and I don't remember now.
I have no idea.
But regardless, I did finish ahead of both you, Evan, and Eric in both challenges. So
that's not saying much. I vaguely remember my bracket being busted after the first handful of games.
I'm pretty sure my bracket was fairly busted at an early stage.
I don't know.
I'd have to go back and look. But anyway, yes, join our bracket challenge. Links are on our Facebook and X feeds. Let's move on to some football. Got a lot of free agent signings to talk about, and we're just going to try and focus on the major ones. So I'm going to go through the NFL teams in alphabetical order, starting with the Atlanta Falcons, who signed quarterback Kirk Cousins How about that?
I was not expecting that at all. They signed Kirk Cousins for a whole bunch of money, coming off a very serious injury. I believe Kirk Cousins lives in Georgia somewhere. Like his father's a pastor or something.
Yeah, I don't know where he lives, but do you want to take a guess as to where each of us had Kirk Cousins starting in week 1 of next season?
I think I had him out of the league.
No, you had him somewhere.
Oh,
You put 3
okay.
points on him to be the starter for the Denver Broncos.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And then Eric and I both had him for the Vikings. So looks like we're all going to be getting that one wrong.
Way off.
Way off. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate the move for Kirk, and I don't really hate the move for Atlanta. Like I get the concerns about the fact that he's won one playoff game with the Vikings. Not great. Never took them as far as Case Keenum took them. Case Keenum got them to an NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Kirk never got them there.
No.
So I get that concern, but the dude is a really good quarterback. You know, if you can put some good pieces around him, I think that he can still have success. Do I think that he necessarily raises Atlanta's ceiling? No, but he raises their floor a lot. And right now, they need a floor raiser. They have been at the bottom. They have been terrible. Like the one team that has been worse than them consistently in that division is the Panthers recently. You know, the Falcons used to be perennially contending for a division title. It was them and it was the Saints for years.
Yes.
So, you know, you get a quarterback who is actually competent. Like think about who they have had recently. They've had Marcus Mariota. They've had Desmond Ritter. Like these are not quarterbacks that you want starting for your team. Like, you know, I'm a Taylor Heineke truther, but I'm not going to sit here and say Taylor Heineke is even nearly as good as Kirk Cousins. Like, Cousins is going to be the best quarterback that the Falcons have had since Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
And you put him with, you know, maybe like we know that Kirk Cousins will throw it to the tight end. So we might actually start seeing Kyle Pitts be a part of the game plan.
Yeah.
This could be huge for Drake London. Yes, exactly. They bring
allowed to play football again.
Yep. They brought in Darnell Mooney. I think that they traded today for Rondale Moore. I think that those are pretty good pickups. Yeah. Neither of those are like top tier wide receivers, but you know, if Drake London can become what we thought he could be coming out of college, which is a very strong wide receiver 1 type of guy, then Darnell Mooney can easily slot in as a wide receiver 2. I think that he has that kind of talent. Like he's been bad with the Bears, but he's been asked to be the wide receiver 1 ever since DJ Moore left. Bears. You know, what's that?
Everybody's been bad with the Bears.
Yeah. And then Rondale Moore, I think that Rondale Moore is a decent wide receiver 2, and if he's the wide receiver 3, that's fantastic, I think. So, you know, I think that this offense is going to be a lot better. You know, we've seen running backs be successful with Kirk Cousins under center. Dalvin Cook has had several really great seasons. So I think that this can mean really good things for Bijan Robinson as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My question for the Falcons, their defense has been a sieve, I don't know, since the second half of that Super Bowl. Like they're not very good.
Well, I think that's another positive aspect of them signing a really good free agent quarterback is that they don't have to waste their time thinking about that in the draft right now. They can focus on the defense because you're right. That needs to be their focus right now.
Yeah, because, you know, Vic Beasley and Tack McKinley, I'm sure they're available, right? But, like, you know, they weren't even that good when they were first-round draft picks.
Yep.
As defensive ends.
So let's move on alphabetically to your team, Evan, the Baltimore Ravens. And, you know, Arizona has not made any significant signings that I really care to talk about. Like, you know, they've signed like Sean Murphy Bunting, Mac Wilson. Jonah Williams is a pretty good offensive tackle. He's the guy who was with the Lions last year. I'm pretty disappointed. I thought Jonah Williams. No, I'm thinking Jonah Jackson. You're right. Jonah Williams was with Bengals. But nobody really that I felt the need to talk about because they actually would have been before the Atlanta Falcons alphabetically. But, Evan, your Ravens. Big move to re-sign Nelson Aguilar.
Oh, boy.
Biggest news of the week for the Ravens, right?
Oh yeah, biggest news of the week, absolutely.
It's definitely
Uh,
not. It's definitely not signing King Henry, right?
I mean that's not even the biggest news of the week. Ravens re-signed Justin Matabike, um, paid him a bunch of money, defensive tackle. Or did we talk about him last week?
I think we did bring him up last week.
But
Yeah,
had he signed the contract last week?
I
I
don't
don't
know
think
if.
so.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, no, I think he would have signed it last week.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, he's coming back. I think that's the biggest move for the
I mean,
Ravens
I
this
think that's definitely a
offseason.
big move. I like the move to go and get Derrick Henry, though. I
I
think that
I do
this.
too.
I mean, you put him and Keaton Mitchell in that backfield with Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
Like, y'all are going to have to run some two running back sets. So I'm not saying that that needs to be the offensive system,
Mhm.
but you're going to need to run, at least 5 plays out of that set each game, I think.
I mean, you have to put the best players on the field and put the defense in conflict, right? Like if you mean to tell me the defense we're supposed to think about Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry at the same time, in addition to covering receivers and the tight ends as well? Like that's going to be a problem. Um, but I don't think any of these running backs matter if they don't fix the offensive line. Uh, Morgan Moses got traded, I think, to the Jets for like a pick swap or something. Uh, Ronnie Stanley isn't athletic anymore. Um,
Yeah, I
with
mean
the
that's a fair
need
point.
linemen.
We've seen what's happened over the last 2 seasons, in particular this year, with the Titans and their offensive line not run blocking as well. It's led to a lot of frustration for Derrick
Hmm.
Henry fantasy football owners.
Yeah.
He's kind of become the 2 yards in a cloud of dust kind of running back at times, and it's not to say that he can't break a long run from time to time, and he certainly still got the volume to be a very good fantasy option, but he didn't have the consistent game winning performances that we've come to expect from him over the
Yeah.
past the previous 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So
And like the two of us, he's on the wrong side of 30. So
yes. Carolina Panthers signed Deontay Johnson. That's probably the acquired Deontay Johnson by trade with the Steelers. That was probably the most exciting news for the Panthers in terms of additions, but it wasn't free agency. They also wound up trading Brian Burns to the Giants. So, we talked about Brian Burns a little bit last week, and there you go. He's gone.
the Panthers have intentionally mired themselves in eternal suckitude, right? They have nothing. They have nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Their big move is to sign a receiver who can't catch the ball. Good job out of you. Okay? Right? You drafted this quarterback who's really short and you put him behind a non-existent offensive line. Y'all have no defense. You've burned through 17 coaches already. So apparently David Tepper, he made his bajillions of dollars as a hedge fund manager or something. The type people who make trades with stocks and stuff. So it's the type of thing where if it's not working, you just send it away and try something else. And that seems to be the approach with the Panthers, which couldn't be less effective.
Yeah.
Uh,
Personally, I think that the Panthers would have been better off if their offensive line was literally non-existent last year, because at least then, for the half a second that Bryce Young had to throw the ball, he wouldn't have had to try and see over them.
that's true. That's true.
The Chicago Bears signed DeAndre Swift and Kevin Byard. A couple of decent
Okay.
signings. I don't know how much the DeAndre Swift signing moves the needle, but Kevin Byard is a pretty good safety. So I think that'll be a good move for their defense.
They still have Justin Fields as of right now.
Yeah, they still have Justin Fields as of right now. No movement as far as trading him or the number 1 overall pick. So still yet to be seen there. The Cincinnati Bengals franchise tagged T. Higgins, but reportedly Tiggins wants a trade. Joe Mixon was traded to the Houston Texans. So the Bengals are going to have a little bit of roster turnover. They brought in Zach Moss to replace Mixon. So that's going to go great.
I feel like that's a downgrade.
It is.
Okay.
We've talked about, like, I don't think that Mixon is necessarily all that special of a player, but he's definitely better than Zach Moss.
Yeah.
The Browns traded with the Broncos to get Jerry Jeudy. They also brought in Jameis Winston as a backup quarterback. So famous Jameis is heading to Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
The Cowboys made their first free agent signing today. They signed linebacker Eric Kendricks.
From Minnesota.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So their first move of free agency. The Lions have acquired Carlton Davis. It's my team, so I'll talk just a little bit about them. But Carlton Davis is a cornerback. He came from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he has something like 75 career starts. He's a decent cornerback, and we definitely need to address some things on the in the secondary, particularly with C.J. Gardner-Johnson leaving. He's heading back to the Eagles after all of the lovely things that he's had to say about Eagles fans post his departure from them the first time.
I mean, does anybody have nice things to say about Eagle fans? Like, these are people who threw ice at Santa Claus and were eating horse poop off the ground during the Super Bowl parade and had to have the traffic signal poles covered in Crisco grease so people wouldn't climb them, and they climbed them anyway. This is the same fan base that featured somebody intentionally vomiting on a child because they were wearing a Cowboys jersey. So yeah.
I am not, to be clear, I am not saying that I have any issue with the things that C.J. Gardner-Johnson has said about Eagles fans. Support it 100%.
Okay.
What I am saying is, if I had said some of those things, if I had talked about how they are the worst people, I probably wouldn't want to go back and play in front of them for 8 or 9 games a season. That would not be on my agenda.
Oh, I mean, you got to work where you're getting paid, you know?
Yeah, I guess. The Green Bay Packers have signed running back Josh Jacobs, the NFL's rushing title holder from 2 seasons ago in Las Vegas, along with safety Xavier McKinney, who is coming to them from the New York Giants. So a couple of pretty big signings there. The Josh Jacobs signing goes with the Aaron Rodgers departure. He was released.
Aaron Jones.
Thank you. Yes, Aaron Jones. He was released and eventually agreed to terms with the Vikings. So we'll see what happens there. But Josh Jacobs, last couple of seasons has been pretty good. 2 years ago. So he's got a little bit of tread left on his tires, I think. I don't know how much I love the signing just because I feel like he and A.J. Dillon are very similar styles of runners. So I don't think that you're going to get that, you'll get fresh legs by switching between them, but you're not going to get that change of pace benefit that you have between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon.
Mm-hmm.
The Houston Texans, I already mentioned, signed Joe Mixon, but they've been pretty busy. They've also signed Daniil Hunter, Azeez Al-Shahir, Lonnie Johnson, Jeff Okudah. So they've been pretty busy this free agency period already.
They're kind of building a juggernaut down there.
They're certainly doing their best to do it. Yes, they are. Yep. And then Evan, your boy, signed by the Colts, Joe Flacco.
Oh, all right. Good for him.
Yeah. How about that?
Happy for Joe.
Yeah. I he's going to wind up most likely being Anthony Richardson's backup. But Gardner Minshew left. We'll talk shortly about where he landed, but Minshew is no longer with the Colts. So, I like that move for the Colts. I think that Flacco is I think he proved himself as a very, not necessarily like a true starter worthy quarterback option right now in the NFL. But if your starter does get hurt, I think he can step in and do a pretty good job.
Looking at you, New York Jets last year.
Yeah.
As soon as Aaron Rodgers didn't get up after he tried to limp off the field, they should have called Joe. And they're like, you know what? No, gonna stick with Zach Wilson, who we tried to run out of town. Like, y'all thought that was gonna work? Just a disaster.
Yep.
So he took the Browns to playoffs instead.
There you go. Let's see who's next. The Jaguars. Not a whole lot to talk about there. Gabe Davis, Mac Jones. They traded for him with the Patriots.
Are those guys both bums?
Mac Jones definitely is. Gabe Davis usually is.
Okay.
I'll put it that way. He's almost always a bub. The Chiefs signed Irv Smith, tight end. He's moved around a little bit, but known mostly for his time with the Vikings. Matt Ariaza, punter, also signed by the Chiefs. The Raiders, that's the landing place for Gardner Minshew. So he'll be battling with Aiden O'Connell for the starting job there.
Woohoo.
So probably RIP my Raiders pick for starter because I picked Aiden O'Connell. And now I'm thinking that it's probably going to wind up being Gardner Minshew because I think he's better than Aiden O'Connell.
Didn't they cut Jimmy G?
No, he's just he's suspended for the first few games.
Oh, I thought I read that they were planning to cut him.
Maybe I haven't seen anything about them actually doing it. I can quickly Google him, and yes, they actually did. You're right. Yeah, yesterday they released Jimmy Garoppolo and Brian Hoyer, who I did not know was still in the league.
Yeah, and Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah. Bigger signing for the Raiders beyond Minshew, though, is Christian Wilkins. I think that's a great signing. Pair him with Max Crosby. That's going to be that is going to be very terrifying for opposing quarterbacks and offensive lines.
Mm-hmm.
The Chargers, not much there. The only thing that I will mention is that your boy Gus Bus, that's his landing spot after Austin Eckler departed.
Yeah. The Chargers offensive coordinator is Greg Roman. So,
yes, it is. That is true. So he has a little bit of familiarity there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Greg Roman was the OC under Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco 10 years ago now.
The Rams wound up, that was the team that got my offensive lineman, Jonah Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah, a little disappointing there. I liked Jonah. I thought he was a really good player. I would have liked for us to have kept him, but he will get to block for the former Lions quarterback, Matthew Stafford, now.
Mm-hmm.
Dolphins have been pretty busy. I don't know how many of these signings are actually going to move the needle for them. I think the biggest one is definitely going to be Jordan Poyer at safety. They lost Brandon Jones at safety as a departure this offseason. I think that Poyer is definitely an upgrade there.
Their secondary was really terrible.
Yeah, their secondary is bad, so they needed to upgrade. They're still going to need to do some more because he was the only member of the secondary that they brought in. So hopefully they have plans to address that during the draft. The Vikings, I mentioned Aaron Jones ended up going there. They also found a replacement for Kirk Cousins, and that replacement is...
I already forgot.
Sam Darnold.
Oh.
So he'll be walking around the facility seeing ghosts of Kirk Cousins.
I mean, the Vikings quarterback situation is a disaster. I think probably their best move that they could have made was bring Kirk Cousins back. But
that's what they should have done, in my opinion.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's the best move that they had available to them. Because they're not picking high in the draft. Sam Darnold sucks. What? I don't remember who's their backup quarterback. Who's the other guy?
I don't even remember his name anymore.
Because whoever
was it, Nick Mullins? Nick Mullins definitely started a game or two for them.
Yeah,
I don't remember if he's who
Dobbs,
they landed
right?
on. Yes,
Guys.
Bunch of Jags. Yeah. The Patriots. I'm not going to say that I love these moves, but I thought that they were pretty wise to go out and get Jacoby Brissett. It's a guy who's been in the building before. He's been a Patriot before. They brought in Gerard Mayo as the head coach, so somebody who's familiar with the Patriot way. I think that it can be good to have a quarterback who has some familiarity with the organization and being in that building. And
the Patriot
and Brissett is a pretty solid player. Brissett is a solid quarterback, and he is not. He should have been brought back as the starter for the Browns last year because he
Mhm.
played so much better during his 9 or 10 starts before Deshaun Watson came off suspension in 2022. He played so much better than Watson did.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fine move. Brissett should have been the starter from day one and throughout the season for the Commanders this year.
Mhm.
And they waited until the end of the year to put him on the field at all. They also signed former Commander running back Antonio Gibson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Eric, Saints haven't done a whole lot. Their only real addition is linebacker Willie Gay Jr. We mentioned the Giants acquired Brian Burns in a trade with the Panthers. They've also brought in Devin Singletary, Isaiah McKenzie, Drew Lock. So
Drew Lock.
yeah, there you go. And of course, they lost Saquon Barkley. We all know his landing spot. We'll talk about that in just a second. After the Jets, who brought in Tyrod Taylor.
Super Bowl champion Tyrod Taylor.
Super Bowl champion Tyrod Taylor. He has, let's see, exactly as many Super Bowl rings as their other starting quarterback with the Jets.
Who's that? Oh,
Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. If Rodgers even plays this year, apparently he might be Robert F. Kennedy,
gonna be the vice
Robert Kennedy
president of the
Jr.'s
United
vice
States.
president. Yes.
He's not going to have time to, play football if he's got to be brokering peace all over the world and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he's not actually going to be vice president, but he won't know that for sure until November. So
Aaron Rodgers doesn't know much of anything. Right? That is an indictment of the University of California right
Yes.
there. This fool running around.
The Philadelphia Eagles. I already said they got my boy, Eric's boy, CJGJ. They also got Saquon Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty big pickup for them.
Yes, this is Aaron Paul yelling at no one in particular. You can't keep getting away with this. Right? The Eagles just keep adding these stud players, and the rest of the NFC East is like, okay, well, like, all right.
Yep.
If the Eagles could remember how to football, unlike the last third of the season last year, they'd be one of the best teams in NFC.
Well, we will see where we predict them to finish when we get to late August and into September. The Pittsburgh Steelers signed Russell Wilson to a veteran minimum contract. He's going to be getting a buttload of money from his last couple of teams because he still owed some money, I believe, from his Seahawks contract, or maybe that's just ended. But he's definitely owed a lot of money from his Broncos contract. So he don't need the cash. He can sign for the veteran minimum and basically step in and immediately be the starting quarterback for the Steelers, most likely.
I believe Russell Wilson was owed like $39 million this season, maybe 38. But one of those million is being provided by the Steelers now and gets offset from the Broncos, paying the rest of it.
Broncos over there like, thank you guys. Thanks for the million.
Yeah, the Walmart people. We get to save a little bit of money.
Steelers also got your boy, Evan.
Patrick Queen.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I want to talk about Russell Wilson a little.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's do that first.
How was this a good move, right? Like the Steelers, like the Vikings, had limited options at quarterback, right? But like, you can't be happy about going out and getting a guy who another team is paying $39 million to go away, right? Like that's
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think that you'd be happy doing that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well,
like the benefit you would think would be having a veteran quarterback in the building to help Kenny Pickett develop. Is Russell Wilson the veteran quarterback that you want for that situation? He has no track record of mentoring younger players. I'm not saying that he doesn't have the capability of it, but we haven't seen it. Mm-hmm. We have not. He has a completely different style of play from Kenny Pickett, so I don't know how much benefit Pickett would really get from him from a standpoint of learning how to play the position. So I don't see the benefit here. Unless you're treating him as a bridge quarterback, you're moving off of Pickett completely, and you're just looking to potentially be able to draft a quarterback next year. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a mess.
What are your thoughts on Patrick Queen landing with your rivals?
I am not a fan of this. I've been seeing tweets about, Patrick Queen with a classy exit from the Ravens. I'm like, not if you're going over there. It's not classy, right? That's not going to work. Come on, PQ, To be fair, when we did our first draft show in 2020, the Ravens did draft Patrick Queen, as I correctly predicted. But, Patrick Queen, he had struggled as sort of the green dot Mike linebacker type guy. And like his play really took off when the Ravens traded for Roquan Smith from the Bears.
Yep.
And Roquan was the green dot Mike linebacker guy, and Queen could just play like a heat-seeking missile with his hair on fire. Just chasing down everybody and clobbering them. It was a lot of fun to watch. And the Steelers have been lacking speed at the linebacker position. I mean, honestly, since Ryan Shazier got injured.
Yeah.
So, that was what Shazier was great at, was he was fast and big.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they play this, because I believe the Steelers play more of a 3-4 defensive front. And that means you're probably going to have two inside linebackers, and I believe that would be Patrick Queen and Cole Holcomb.
I don't know who that is.
Cole Holcomb, I believe, played for the Commanders before they were the Commanders.
R-words?
I don't know if he was playing with them when they were the R words, maybe, but regardless, actually he probably was, because I think he's been in the league for 5 or 6 years now.
Oh.
So he probably did start when they were still the Slurs. But in any case, they've both been in the league for similar amounts of time. Holcomb for a little bit longer than Queen. So who ends up being the green dot? But I think regardless, having other good players on the defense is going to be very helpful to Patrick Queen. You mentioned he didn't really play all that well until Roquan Smith came to the picture. Well, now he gets to play on a team that has T.J. Watt and Cameron Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi on that defensive front.
Oh, yeah. I mean, did the Steelers keep Minkah Fitzpatrick?
I think so. I don't think that he was a free agent, was he?
I don't think so either, but
yes.
I thought I heard something about him. I don't want Images News.
Minkah Fitzpatrick is
he's not going
still
anywhere.
with the Steelers, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, why would they get rid of him?
I mean,
They'd be pretty silly.
Why would they sign the guy who got paid $39 million to leave?
Right.
$39 million this year
Yes.
to leave, right? Another $50 million next year to leave.
49ers, not a whole lot to see there. Leonard Floyd, Jordan Elliott, Yetur Gross-Matos. So 3 defensive linemen, and that's pretty much it. Seattle has signed Rayshon Jenkins, defensive back. Not a whole lot there. The Buccaneers, they've signed a couple of players, I think, but nobody really of note. The Titans signed Tony Pollard to replace Derrick Henry. That doesn't really move the needle for me. Right? That's a clear downgrade.
Yeah.
They signed Calvin Ridley. That's nice. Need a quarterback to throw it to him, though.
Oh.
And then they have
Billy Jeans, Will Levis.
Yeah. Well, they also signed Mason Rudolph.
Oh.
So that brings us to the last team, the local team, the Washington Commanders, who have signed a boatload of players, including Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz, Brandon McManus, Marcus Mariota, Bobby Wagner.
It's like last call at the bar.
This is what Washington does. This is what Washington has always does. Is there a more Washington signing than Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner and Marcus Mariota?
Yes, this is a great team from 2014 or something.
Right. Yes. So there you go. That is those are the most significant signings from the past week in NFL free agency. If we missed any, let us know. It's certainly possible we could have, but I think that we were fairly exhaustive with that list. And with that, Evan, if you are ready.
There's minor news. Devin White signed with the Eagles. 1 year, $7.5 million, former Buccaneer. And then swimmers and other athletes sue the NCAA over Title IX transgender policies.
We'll have to look more into that before we make any comments on it.
I don't have any comments.
So, okay. All right. Let's move to our baseball preview. Last week, we previewed the American League East teams. Already a little bit of an update on the Yankees front. My Yankees got news, I believe just yesterday, that Garrett Cole is going to be out for at least a month or two. And based on the information that was given as to the reason, I think Evan, you and I, and Eric are all in agreement that this sounds like something that's probably more significant than a 60-day break.
Yeah. The Yankees said that he'd be out a month or two, and he was going to go visit with Dr. Neil Elatrash, the surgeon. Usually, when you're going to go see the surgeon, it's not for an out a month or two type of thing. So this didn't quite add up to me. Obviously, hoping that Garrett Cole is healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I am too. This is the defending AL Cy Young winner.
Yeah,
it's a great pitcher, and without him, I mean, it really hurts the Yankees' season.
I mean, if the Yankees don't have Aaron Judge, they're screwed. If the Yankees don't have Garrett Cole, they're screwed.
Yeah,
like that's
we did some work to try and shore up our pitching staff, but it's built around him.
Right, the Cy Young Award winner, like you said.
So
not having that guy, like you're just gonna slide everybody up a spot and keep it rolling. Like that's not, that's wishful thinking at best.
Yes, it is. So let's move to this week's division preview. We'll start with the American League Central. And last year, the division champions, the Minnesota Twins, 87-75, they snapped an 18-game losing streak, not an 18-series losing streak, they had lost 18 straight playoff games. That is the North American pro sports record. Finally snapped it last year. They in fact ended up winning their series. They swept the Toronto Blue Jays and wound up losing to the Astros in the ALDS. So they are projected for 87.5 wins this season based on the over-under on FanDuel Sportsbook. Team lost a few key pieces this offseason. Sonny Gray left for the St. Louis Cardinals. Kenta Maeda left for the Detroit Tigers. Jorge Polanco left for the Seattle Mariners. Joey Gallo left for the Washington Nationals. So they've had some pretty significant departures this offseason. But I still think that this may be the best team in the division this year.
Yeah, they'll win this division. I wrote, I find myself underwhelmed. Like they're the best team in this division, but like these other teams just, really don't have a lot.
Yeah, I mean this is a team. 500 is 81-81. They won 87 games.
Yeah,
and they won this division by 9.
Hmm.
So, and they're projected for basically the same record this year, but projected to win the division. So, I will say, I mentioned the Jorge Polanco departure. So he was actually traded for some pitching depth. Um, I don't dislike that move. Jorge Polanco is a very good infielder, but they have some really good infielders still in the organization. The first three bats in their projected lineup this season: Edouard Julian at second base, Royce Lewis at third base, and Carlos Correa at shortstop. And then on top of that, they expect to get Brooks Lee at some point. He's the number 15 prospect in baseball. He can play either midfield position. So at some point, Polanco probably felt like the player that could most easily be moved for a couple of decent depth pieces, and they went ahead and did it. And I have no problem with that at all for them.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the type of move the Orioles need to make. But they've got a logjam of infielders. Um, send a couple of guys up the road for some pitching depth. I noticed that Byron Buxton is listed on their roster as a DH only.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw that too.
I thought that was strange. Um, like he's a tremendous fielder and tremendous athlete, and you're just going to have him hit only. I know I don't know if clumsy is the right word or accident prone, but he was always getting hurt running around in the outfield, smashing the walls or diving or something. So,
Well, I
um,
mean, as we say all the time on here, the best ability is availability, and if he's, so clumsy out there that he's getting hurt playing the
mhm,
field, then that kind of offsets how good of a fielder he is when he's healthy.
yes, I agree. Um,
Anytime you have to put that qualifier when he's healthy, it's like, okay, so that basically means that there's a lot of times when he's not.
yeah. The other thing I wrote down, they have a pitcher named Cody Funderbunk on their team.
Is he in the bullpen?
I don't know.
Okay,
Cody with a K.
interesting. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I
Funderbunk.
yeah, I mentioned the pitching here as probably being the weak point for the Twins this season. They have Pablo Lopez at probably the top of the rotation, and he was a terrific pitcher in his final three seasons in Miami. He continued that level of play last year. So I think that he's a worthy ace, but he's not necessarily an elite ace. He's not one of those top 5 or 10 pitchers in baseball. And I think everybody behind him is going to be slightly below average for their spot in the rotation until you get to Anthony DeSclafani in the 5 spot. I think the really big question for them is going to be revolve around Chris Paddock. Right now, he's projected to be the 4th pitcher in their rotation. He's returning after a short stretch as a reliever in September when he came back from Tommy John surgery. So now they're going to be working him back into being a starter, and hopefully he can stay healthy. Hopefully he can be successful, because if he can be good, then that may give their rotation a little bit of a lift.
All right.
Yeah. So other key additions for the Twins this offseason: Carlos Santana, Justin Topa, Jay Jackson, Josh Stallman. So we'll see what the Twins have in store. We can move on to the team that finished second last year in the division at 78-84. That was the Detroit
Cleveland.
Tigers.
Oh.
They are projected for 80.5 wins by FanDuel Sportsbook, 7 games behind Minnesota.
You're doing a completely different order than I was expecting.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
I just kind of decided to go with the order that they finished last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So sorry about that. But in any
For
case,
Tigers.
it's also not the order that I'd initially planned to do. So I'm throwing
Yeah.
myself off a little bit. Detroit lost Miguel Cabrera to retirement this offseason. Eduardo Rodriguez left for Arizona, and Jose Cincinnati went to the Angels. But they brought in some decent players, including Kenta Maeda and Jack Flaherty, Shelby Mitchell, Andrew Chafin, Mark Canna.
Shelby Miller.
Sorry, yes, Shelby Miller. The Tigers haven't made a playoff appearance, even with the expanded playoffs and a 16-team field during the COVID year, since 2014.
What?
That's when they won their
Really?
4th straight division title. They have
And their
not made it
manager was
since.
Brad Ausmus.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been to the playoffs since.
They had Justin Verlander back then. I believe he was still with them at the time. They had Miguel Cabrera in his prime.
He gave up a home run in game 1
Yes,
to
yes.
earn game. No, Justin Verlander left the mound with the lead in game 2, but that was the Delman double game.
Oh,
Verlander
right, yes.
started for the Tigers that day.
In any case,
he was great.
They have not been to the playoffs since.
Wow. That is stunning to me.
Yeah. As I was looking through, as I was gathering notes, I was looking at some different people's projections and their thoughts on players that have been added and whatnot. And I noticed that Matt Snyder, a writer at CBS, wrote in his preview of the Tigers that he does not expect the Tigers to roll with an everyday lineup. He mentioned 2 players as likely everyday starters, and those, as far as fielders and hitters, those are right fielder Riley Green and first baseman Spencer Torkelson.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have players that you can trust on an everyday basis to hit against both right-handers, left-handers, play the field every day, what does that say about a team?
They are a ghost ship, right? Like one of those boats that just gets abandoned at sea somehow. It's just floating around.
It's just a complete mystery as to how it is still afloat. Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly it. So I don't think that we can expect a whole lot from their offense, but I think their pitching could be a strength. Tariq Skubal is likely going to lead the rotation. He's been excellent for the last 2 seasons when he's been on the field. But again, there's that qualifier. He's had 2 straight abbreviated seasons due to injuries. So you can point to his 3-year average over the last 3 years, which includes a pretty poor 2021 campaign. His 3-year average is still a 3.74 ERA and a 1.14 WHIP. That's pretty good. That's pretty great. But you got to stay on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to need him to stay healthy so that Jack Flaherty and Kenta Maeda don't have to move up into more prominent roles in the rotation. Because those 2 are serviceable pitchers, but they're not aces.
I asked, is Casey Mize a number 1 pick kind of guy? Right? Shout out loyal listener James Daly, fellow Auburn grad like Casey Mize, but like what's going on here? Right? You pick this guy 1-1, and I mean, does he suck? Like what is the deal?
He hasn't done anything so far. Yeah,
and like this is the other thing. This is why I'm shocked the Tigers haven't been to the playoffs in 10 years now. The Tigers were a year ahead of the Orioles in the sort of rebuild process. Like they started tearing it down in 2018 or so, maybe in 17, and they were sort of being horrible and just plodding along, like the Orioles. And then when it was time for them to turn the corner, they just didn't. They signed Javi Baez for a bunch of money, and all he's been doing is OPSing .592 in 2023, exercising poor fundamentals and collecting checks.
Now, for those who aren't as familiar with what a good OPS is, Evan, .592, that's a terrific OPS, right?
No, it's terrible. Terrible. Notice Javi Baez wasn't mentioned as one of the everyday players that you listed, Corey.
No, I noticed that immediately, and I had a little bit of a laugh at that.
Yeah, Spencer Torkelson, I don't think he's good either.
No, but when you're putting him above Javi Baez, it's saying a lot.
Yeah,
that's saying a lot.
He was another high draft pick like Casey Mize. He might be a bust. They have Mark Canha, who I noted got old fast. He's already 35.
He is. That's true.
What happened? When he was. On
I
the
only
A's,
started to hear about him like 3 years ago with the A's.
Yeah, and now he's 35.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, playing for the Mets will do that to you, right? That ages you quickly.
That's true. The Cleveland Guardians, 76 and 86 last year, projected for a modest increase to 79.5 wins by FanDuel Sportsbook. Welcome to the manager's seat, Stephen Vogt.
Yes.
I think the role of managers in baseball is probably a bit overblown.
Oh yeah.
I'd be interested to get your thoughts, Evan, because I don't usually look at a manager as being capable of, say, adding wins above replacement, so to speak. But I do think that they can cost them, and you can. You can definitely make bad decisions that are going to cost your team games. I don't think that you can necessarily coach your team up to be better than the sum of its parts, the way that sometimes you can see in the NFL. Like last year with the Giants, Brian Dable absolutely coached that team to be better than the sum of its parts. They did not have a talented team in 2022, and they made the playoffs.
The New York Giants.
Yes, the New York Giants. I don't think that you can do that in baseball. I don't think you can take a subpar team and just off of the strength of managing, turn them into an 87 to 92 win team.
That's not a thing in baseball.
It's not a thing.
Earl Weaver's not in the Hall of Fame because of his, brilliance or whatever. He's not a wizard, right? He had good players.
But you can absolutely manage a team in such a way that you can take an average team that should finish 81 and 81 and turn them into a 70-win team.
Oh, yeah. Like Tony La Russa for the White Sox, or Bobby Valentine in
Stephen
Boston.
Vogt could be a perfectly fine manager. There is no way he's going to be as good as Terry Francona, future Hall of Famer.
Oh, no.
So I have a really hard time believing that Cleveland is going to equal their 2023 win total of 76, much less hit FanDuel's projection of right around 80 wins.
Yeah.
I just don't see it because they didn't address their offensive woes at all. The rotation might be a little bit better than last year. Their bullpen might be a little bit better than last year, but the offense is going to be the same. So maybe this is a team that on paper should win 3 or 4 more games. I don't think they're actually going to do that, though.
I don't either. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to invoke a couple former Yankees managers. Buck Showalter would say it's not about the managing you do, it's about the managing you don't do.
Mm-hmm.
So like young managers tend to overmanage sometimes because they're the manager and they have to manage stuff.
Especially when you have somebody like Stephen Vogt who doesn't have any managing experience up to this point.
Literally zero. And then, of course, Joe Torre, right? Those Yankees teams, he wasn't the secret sauce, that led them to all those championships, right? He didn't do anything special that any other manager wouldn't have done. Those teams were loaded with Hall of Famers all over the field.
Yeah, the difference was that there were times that maybe he didn't do things that other managers would have done.
Yeah. So, it's hey, it's the ninth inning. Put Rivera in. Like, oh, okay. I was going to put in somebody else.
Yeah.
Really?
So, you look at Cleveland and what they've added this offseason, because this is a team that last year, their offense, they ranked 12th in OPS and runs and dead last in home runs. And I'm not saying
12th.
I'm not saying 12. I'm not saying 12th in all of baseball.
Oh.
I am saying, as you just said, Evan, 12th in the American League, 12th out of 15 in runs and OPS and dead last in home runs. And the 2 most noteworthy names they added this offseason, both pitchers. Scott Barlow, a middle reliever who, is he really going to make that big of a difference? Middle relievers don't make that big of a difference in a team. And Carlos Carrasco, who they signed to a minor league deal and hasn't been particularly good since 2018. He was downright pathetic last year with the Mets. He had a minus 1.3 WAR in 20 starts.
Well, he also is a cancer survivor.
Yeah. That's
so I feel like after somebody comes back from cancer, we're just glad you're in the mortal realm with us.
I agree with that completely from a human standpoint.
Yeah, but that.
But in terms of being a player, he does not move the needle
on the baseball field.
Definitely doesn't move the needle in a positive way for me, for this team.
No.
So the question comes down to their pitching. how much can their pitching realistically improve? Can it overcome their offense likely being about the same as it was last year? Tristan McKenzie needs to stay healthy. If he can.
Did they feed him this offseason? I thought I saw he was like 6'5", 165.
Is that as bad as Chris Sale? I feel like that might not quite be as bad as Chris Sale. If they can keep him healthy, I think the rotation should be a lot better than it was last year because he missed a good portion of the season. They still finished ninth in all of baseball in starting ERA.
6'5", 175 for McKenzie.
There you go. Maybe Scott Barlow can help their bullpen improve on also finishing ninth place in relief ERA in 2023. I do want to acknowledge there's been some pretty promising reports this offseason regarding Shane Bieber. We've all kind of seen that he's lost quite a bit of his velocity over the last few years. But there are some reports that he's hitting velocity that's closer to what he was pulling back in like 2018, 2019. He's gotten the break on his curveball back up to around 14 inches, which is kind of where it was when he was at his peak performance. So, if that holds into the season and through the season, maybe the pitching does pick up the slack a bit. But again, I think that a lot of those improvements are going to be rendered moot with the lack of offensive improvement and the almost certain downgrade at manager.
I mean, yeah. Apparently, there's people speculating the Yankees could trade for Shane Bieber. I searched news on Google Shane Bieber, and it's just a bunch of trade speculation.
If they're gonna do it, probably smarter to do it now when his cost is probably a little bit lower, because good reports out of camp and from just like pitching sessions, I don't think that's going to inflate his value that much. If he starts pitching really well during the season, then you're going to have to pay a pretty penny, and I'd rather the Yankees not have to do that if they're going to go and make a move like that.
I mean, they'd be trading for a similar problem. Shane Bieber had elbow trouble last year. So, you already have a guy who's got a Cy Young Award and elbow trouble.
Yeah. Let's turn our attention to Chicago.
Oh, boy.
Fourth place last year in the division. 61 and 101. That's right. They lost 100 games, and they did not finish last in the division.
Mm-hmm.
FanDuel Sportsbook has them projected to finish last in the Central with 60.5 wins. So basically right where they were last year.
60.5.
Well, they put the over-under at a half win.
Yeah, but they're just exactly the same.
Yes, exactly the same. So I'll let you go first on this one, and partly because you often like to kind of praise or not praise the White Sox, but kind of talk them up a little bit.
Really?
You've been a fan of some of their pitchers in the past. Granted, the most notable one is no longer there.
Yeah, I mean, the White Sox, they were a team that was, even before the Orioles back when the Orioles were good and going to the playoffs in 2012-14 or so, that's when the White Sox did their rebuild, and it's been so far a complete disaster. It's been 10 years, and they didn't get anything out of it. And I don't really know what went wrong. They have Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, and Yohan Moncada, but they didn't deliver on the promise of their sort of prospect status, or at least they haven't yet. They kept their manager. I had assumed that they got a new manager after 61 and 101.
It was their worst season since 1970.
Ooh.
They finished 26 games out of first place in the division.
Oh, okay. The Orioles finished 60 games out of first place in 2018. So
yeah, but at least you didn't fall that far behind in the worst division in baseball.
That's true. 2018 Orioles got pounded by the best division.
Yes.
Let's see. Corey, you listed all of the additions and departures. It is a long list.
Yes, I wanted to
So
mention that because that's probably the thing that's most worth talking about
the
with the
most
White
telling.
Sox, which is
Yeah.
it's just an absolutely ludicrous level of roster churn because
Hmm.
all of this comes from MLB.com, and they
Hmm.
don't list every single addition or departure for any team, only the most notable ones. And so for most teams, that averages out to between 4 and 6 players in the addition column, 4 and 6 players in the departure column. Chicago has 16 players listed as notable additions and another 12 as notable departures. Like, they don't have the same team as they had last year.
They traded away Dylan Cease today too. I added
Yeah,
him.
yeah. So we have to add. I had made my notes yesterday, and so I actually had in there that some people think that the second number may grow by at least one. The departures number might grow by at least one with Dylan Cease, and lo and behold, yesterday he gone. He's at the Pirates now. We'll be talking about him a little bit next week.
The Pirates?
I'm sorry, the Padres. The Padres. That's why I said we'll be talking about him next week.
Yeah.
I was thinking the right thing. I just said the wrong name. In any case, I mean that's. I'll be interested to get a chance to look a little more into what the return is going to be on that trade because Cease still has 2 years of team control on his contract. So I think Chicago was very hesitant to pull the trigger on trading him unless they were sure that they were going to be getting a good return. So I'll be very curious to see that because that's probably going to add another 2 or 3 players to the notable additions list too.
I mean, maybe, but like they probably traded him for some minor leaguers, and like they got to start their rebuild over again. I wouldn't expect to hear anything from the White Sox in terms of contending till they. I mean, they're in the middle of trying to get a new stadium because their current stadium is just the most bland, just colorless, flavorless, just box building like ever.
Well, I mean, their team colors are just white and black.
Yes.
So, I mean, do you
Although
expect
they do
anything
have
else
red
from there?
uniforms.
What's
So,
that?
They do have red uniforms.
Yeah, and those are stupid.
They are really stupid. Yeah, so they're trying to get a new stadium. So I imagine that's when their next contending window will open.
Yeah. So that'll take us to the last team that we have to talk about in the AL Central. That is the Kansas City Royals, who finished last in the division last year, 56-106, so 5 games behind Chicago, 31 games outside of first place in the Central Division.
And only 50 games under 500.
And only 50 games under 500. This year, they are projected by FanDuel Sportsbook to win 73.5 games. So that'd be 13 games ahead of Chicago, but 14 behind Minnesota. And the reason for that, 73.5. The reason for that is, you talked earlier about, Chicago kind of started their process there at the same time as the Orioles with their rebuild. Well, the Royals decided this offseason to just abandon that process. They had their lowest win total since 2005 last year. And so they changed course and signed a bunch of ho-hum free agents and they traded prospects for veterans. Wow. And so basically what they're doing is they are committing to being mediocre. They don't want to go through the whole rebuild and try and become a dominant team, which, to be fair, is it possible to really become a dominant team in this division? Nobody seems to want to go and play for these teams.
Is it possible? That's what they did. Okay? The Kansas City Royals, the last 3 times they went to the playoffs, they went to the World Series. Right? In, what was it, 1985, 2014, and 15. And that's it. Okay? So, this is what? They're going to sign a bunch of mediocre players and just be, 78 wins max.
Yeah.
That's unbelievably stupid out of them.
Yeah. So I think the whole thing is like this allows them to get up into kind of like that middle window of the division or whatever. But like that's not what you're going for. You want to win a division. And this
You
is
want
not
to win the
this
championship.
is not the way to do that. Like this I mean, I guess in theory this could work out for them to be able to get a playoff spot because this is baseball's worst division, right? If they were in any other division, this would literally banish them to a purgatory-like status.
Mm-hmm.
With this division, maybe some things fall in a certain way, and that gives them an opening to win the division. They're not going to be competitive in the playoffs.
No.
So it's weird. Like they let Zach Greinke walk this offseason, which fair enough. Like he's still a free agent, so I don't know how much the demand is there for him. He hasn't been that great for the past few years. So they're building their rotation on Cole Reagans, who was really good in 12 starts for them last year after they acquired him from the Rangers around the All-Star break or around the trade deadline. And outside of that, like, I don't know. Like they added Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo to the middle of their rotation. Their bullpen is definitely going to be really good this year. Like that's been kind of the biggest point of emphasis for them. Last year they ranked second to last in baseball in relief ERA. So they went out and they added John Schreiber and Chris Stratton as setup men. They added Will Smith, not the catcher for the Dodgers, but the other Will Smith,
the actor, right?
Not the actor either.
The rapper Will Smith.
But the other Will Smith, who was as a closer. But I mean, that's kind of an interesting one because I happened to notice as I was looking through Smith's stat history, he's been in the majors since 2012, and out of 113 career saves, 93 of them have come in odd-numbered years. That's 93 in odd numbers years and 20 in even-numbered years since 2012. And Evan, 2024, that is
an even-numbered year.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes. So, I'm honestly disgusted. Right? This idiotic philosophy. Let's just sign a bunch of bums and see what happens. Like that's not how you win.
But they signed Adam Frazier.
He's a bum.
They signed Hunter Renfroe.
Okay.
Yes. This is where we are.
Yeah, I'm disgusted. Right? Like this is just nauseating how they're just like, "Oh, well, we're just going to try to be pathetic instead of putrid." Like, no, you got to go for and it worked for this team already. Right? They had all those top draft picks for years and years and years. And then they all show up to the majors at the same time and, they
all suck at the same
start
time.
playing well and
Oh, you're talking about before, yes.
Yeah, before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they won a championship. So, like
and we're super annoying while doing it.
Yeah, so annoying. I still hate them. So to completely flip and to go this other just this loser mentality of it. It drives me crazy. They paid Bobby Witt Jr. 11 years, $288.7 million.
I mean, Bobby Witt Jr. is a good player.
Okay.
But he was on their team last year.
And they were atrocious.
So, like, does that move the needle?
I mean, you have to keep a Bobby Witt Jr.
Sure, but you got to keep him, but that's not going to impress me enough to say, oh, this team is like going to be contending. Not just off of that.
Yeah, so. No. This is pathetic, just loser mentality type behavior.
Well, let's move from a division that FanDuel projects will have a 27-game split from first to last to another one that FanDuel projects will only have a 9-game range.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
The highest win total projected is 84.5, and the lowest is 75.5.
84?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think they need to abolish the two central divisions. Like, just go back.
Do the teams get absorbed elsewhere, or do the teams just get abolished too?
I mean, if they don't get over 500, like y'all just have to sit 2025 out or something. Like this is it's unbelievable how 2 playoff spots go to 2 of these 10 teams.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the last place AL East team
Is
and the
better
last place
than the
NL
first
West
place.
team will
Yeah.
probably be better.
Yeah.
Let's start with last year's division winner, the Milwaukee Brewers. They went 92-70. They are projected for 76.5.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty big drop. About
Precipitous.
16 games. Yes, precipitous is a great word to use for that. So, what do we attribute these much lower expectations to? Well, obviously, one of those reasons, Evan, because
Yes.
your team is holding one of those reasons on their starting rotation.
Yes, Corbin Burns was traded to the Orioles for DL Hall and Joey Ortiz.
Mm-hmm. Brandon Woodruff injured for the year.
Wow.
Pitching is going to be an issue for this team. Like that, the only guy left in their rotation who has the stuff of an ace, like he has the arm talent of an ace, is Freddie Peralta, and we've seen that he can be wildly inconsistent.
Oh. Well, don't forget Wade Miley, who's still there. He's only 37 years old.
Oh my God. So the offense is going to have to be. They are going to have to pick up the slack for the pitching this year. And can they do it? I think the offense is probably going to be better than it was last year because the offense was atrocious. They brought in Rhys Hoskins. I think that's a pretty good signing.
Well, his name is Rhys Hoskins.
Thank you. So. Yes, Rhys Hoskins.
Yes.
They acquired DL Hall and Joey Ortiz in the Burns deal. But then again, they also acquired a guy named Gary Sanchez this offseason.
Your boy.
Yeah. So I think the Brewers could probably count themselves lucky if they avoid a last place finish in the division.
I think they stay out of last, but not that far out of last. What about Christian Yelich? Is he still good? What happened to him?
I don't think he's still good. I think he's still there. He's a warm
Yeah,
body.
he's still there. But I'm happy for Rhys Hoskins having to sit out last year. I think he had an ACL injury.
Yeah, he did.
On that Phillies team. There were some memes about how he's smiling so much less in his picture compared to when he was with the Phillies.
It may have just been a long year.
I mean, I guess, but like, the Brewers aren't going to win anything. There's nothing here.
I agree.
I mean, well, there's something, but there's
it's not literally nothing. It's figuratively nothing.
Yeah, they didn't have that great of a team last year, and they got so much worse. So
yeah,
So
that takes us to the team that finished second last year, 9 games behind Milwaukee at 83-79. That was the Chicago Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
And Chicago, I think, is kind of an interesting story here because, the pitching is going to regress. They lost Marcus Stroman. But I think Justin Steele is a pretty trustworthy guy at the top of the rotation. They brought in Shota Imanaga, the Japanese pitcher, this offseason. Big news was over the offseason was them re-signing Cody Bellinger. That was an important move for them. But maybe even bigger than that is I think that they did get a bit of an upgrade at manager. They went out and they paid Craig Counsell $40 million over 5 years to make him the highest paid manager in baseball. Counsell was the manager for the Brewers, and over his 8 seasons there, he averaged 86 wins per 162.
Okay.
That included 7 straight years of finishing top 2 in this division after his first year. So
I know the Brewers were the 1 seed in the National League, and they took the Dodgers to a Game 7 in the NLCS.
Yeah, they did.
That was a pretty electric series.
Yeah.
So who's the Brewers' new manager?
I don't know.
I'm looking that up now. Pat Murphy.
Never heard of him.
Huh? He's 65. He rides a scooter.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It'd be entertaining to see him go out there to yell at the umpires for bad calls. do donuts on home plate. How quickly will you get thrown out for that?
Am I supposed to have heard of this person? I have no idea who Pat Murphy is.
Like I said, never heard of him. So, all the more reason to not expect Milwaukee to do well and potentially to finish last in the division. So yeah, I think Chicago has a decent ceiling this year. I think that a division title is certainly in the cards for them.
It's theirs to lose, in my opinion.
I don't know if I would quite go that far. And we'll get to the teams that could get in their way in a moment. But I guess one of them we can go ahead and jump to now, and that's the Cincinnati Reds. 82 and 80 last year, so just barely kept it above 500. They're projected for 82 and a half this season. Love it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're a fun team.
Yeah. We're gonna get a full season of Ellie De La Cruz, right?
Fingers crossed. Knock on wood. Knock on all the wood. Hopefully, we get a full healthy season from him because he is one of the most fun players to watch in baseball right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a guy who can hit the ball out of the park and he can steal home plate. It
was against the Brewers. He stole second, third, and home plate on 2 pitches.
Yeah. Dude is electric. He's
steal 3 bases and 2 pitches.
So I'm praying that he stays healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Reds had a fairly solid offseason. You know, they weren't overly active, but they went out and got a couple of solid arms. They got Frankie Montas and Nick Martinez. The only 2 players who left their team from last year who had positive WAR in 2023 were Derek Law and Chasen Shreve. They combined for 0.5 WAR. And those are the only 2 players who left them that had positive WAR last year. Everybody else who departed from the Reds, they were a below replacement level player. And that includes Joey Votto, who, after spending his entire career to this point with the Reds, is now a Blue Jay.
Mm-hmm.
But he was
at a minor league deal.
Right, but he was at minus 0.1 last year, and he was even worse than that in 2022. So it was time.
Yeah, Eric and I saw. He had a home run, a little can of corn. Sneaked over the fence somehow. What about Hunter Green? How good is he? I think that's a key for the Reds this year.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be. No, I mean that's a fair point. I mean, I hope that he plays well this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the last thing I wrote down, shout out Buck Farmer, Georgia Tech's own. Eric and I watched him pitch when we were out in Cincinnati in 2022. He pitched a third of an inning and gave up 4 runs. So, took the loss that night.
That's rough.
Yeah.
A team that probably is not going to factor in at the top of the standings, the team that finished 4th last year and who FanDuel has projected to finish last this year, the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
They went 10 games below 500 last year, 76 and 86. They're projected for, Evan, you want to take a guess?
Probably 76 and a half wins.
Other way, 75 and a half.
Oh, okay.
But you saw it coming. So, I don't know. What do you think about the Pirates this year, Evan?
I mean, they could be better, right? Like, is O'Neal Cruz and Brian Hayes healthy? But I mean, there's not a whole lot here either.
I mean, they definitely can't be worse than they were on the O'Neal Cruz front last year. He played 9 games. Before he fractured his fibula.
And
this is a guy.
He didn't come back at all?
He didn't come back at all last year.
Oh, wow.
I mean, a fibula, you're not going to come back from that within the same season.
Terrell Owens did, right? He broke his fibula and then played in the Super Bowl that year.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I don't
Yeah.
know. In any case, I mean, this is a player who I don't know how good O'Neal Cruz is really going to be. I mean, he finished sixth in Rookie of the Year voting in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
but like his batting average has been like low to mid 200s. His OBP is like under 300. So like, I mean, he definitely has promise, and you can't really judge him off of not even a full season of play that he's had to this point in his
Yeah.
major league career. But I think there's still a lot of question marks there. So we can be happy, welcome back O'Neal Cruz and all that, but putting high expectations on him may set yourself up for some disappointment.
Yeah. I mean the Pittsburgh Pirates, they're like the Pirates owner has to be so glad that the A's owner exists. Because like whoever the Pirates owner is, like
Nobody's thinking about him.
yeah, like I don't even know his name. Like they're just existing, right? Like they're not, competing, contending. They're just going around, going through the motions. They're not building or tearing down. They're just here.
Yeah. So they did bring in some arms this offseason. They brought in Martin Perez and Marco Gonzalez, which is good because Johan Oviedo, as you may know, had Tommy John surgery in late November, so he will not be back this year. They also added Aroldis Chapman, who some people, like myself, had the misfortune of seeing some very bizarre and disconcerting social media posts about yesterday. I would strongly advise not looking it up, but
why would you say that?
I don't know. Maybe the same reason that you mentioned the stuff going on in the NCAA, even though we don't have anything to say about it yet.
Oh,
I don't know.
Okay.
But regardless of all that, Chapman is getting older. His stuff has not been as dominant these last two seasons as it was when he was younger. He's 36 years old now.
I think I saw that. Yeah.
So
you tell me a 36-year-old can't throw 110 miles an hour anymore?
If he can, drug test him every day.
Yeah.
Anything to add on the Pirates?
Let's see. Andrew McCutchen is back.
Oh, that's
on the
right.
roster.
Yeah, he is. That's cool.
It is.
Yeah,
that's cool. And that's it.
The last place team in this division a year ago, 20 games below 500, St. Louis Cardinals, and the team that FanDuel Sportsbook believes is going to win this division.
What?
They have them going worst to first. 84.5 wins, the over-under set on the St. Louis Cardinals. And I'll be honest, I can kind of see it. I can see why. I don't know that I necessarily expect them to do that. I'm like I said, I'm not going to go so far as to say that it is the Cubs to lose, because I think that the Cardinals and the Reds are both right there. And so I think that it could be any of the three of them, and I'm not going to be like, oh, this other team blew a golden opportunity. Like, how could they lose to these other two teams? I'm not going to go that far. I do expect the Cubs to, preliminarily, I think the Cubs are probably the team that should win this division. But I can see why a sports book would look at the Cardinals and be like, yeah, this team has the makings of a division champion in a weak division.
I'm getting Dallas Cowboys inflated odds vibes. Like they have a bunch of old guys. Okay? Like, I mean, Brandon Crawford's here. They added Kyle Gibson, who's, okay. They have who I described as ancient Matt Carpenter. Okay? Like, this is just, like, these are the people you added and you're counting on. Tommy Edman, I saw when I clicked on the Cardinals MLB app Page. He's ruled out for opening day with a wrist injury. Goldschmidt, Arenado, and Lars Nootbaar are the guys to count on this year. But like, they were so incredibly terrible last year.
But you also missed a couple of pretty key additions that they have this offseason. Along with Kyle Gibson, they brought in Lance Lynn. Those are a couple of
younger either.
Those are a couple of guys who aren't elite, but are still an upgrade for their team. They also brought in Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray was outstanding last year. He posted an ERA comfortably under 3. Okay. It was like in the 2.7s. So they have massively upgraded their pitching staff. Again, I get it. Are Gibson and Lynn exciting? No. But they are so much better than who they had last year.
I thought their defense was bad last year, too.
But a lot of that came down to the pitching, to be honest. Because one thing that you have to pay attention to with the defense, a lot of their issues, I think, really kind of stemmed at catcher. And that was, if you remember, Yadier Molina retires. Mm-hmm. They bring in Wilson Contreras, right? Wilson Contreras plays so poorly behind the dish that they wind up benching him for a while and then eventually bring him back because they realized he was still better offensively and the other guy they brought in wasn't really doing that much better than at catcher, which, no duh. Like you've been letting your pitchers, deliver to the plate in a certain kind of way for years because you have a human vacuum behind the dish. Molina doesn't let stuff get by him.
Well, there's only one human vacuum cleaner. That was Brooks Robinson.
No. Fair enough.
Respect.
Regardless, Molina did not let stuff get by him.
No.
Like that, you could throw a pitch that was going to drop into the dirt to try and get that swing and a miss because you knew that Molina was going to block it.
You were confident.
You're not going to get that from a Wilson Contreras, and you have to accept that, and you have to adjust your pitching strategy for that, and they refused to do that last year.
Well, they shouldn't have signed a catcher who can't catch.
Well, you shouldn't sign a catcher who can't catch, but you also are never going to, you're not going to find another Yadier Molina on the streets. You're not going to find another Yadier Molina in your, just sitting around in your farm system.
But at least get a catcher who's a defense-first guy.
Or have your pitchers adjust and stop throwing in the dirt.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean...
Yeah, you don't have a Gold Glove magician behind the plate anymore. Mm-hmm. That's like, I don't know what else to tell you.
Call one of the other Molinas, right? Let's bring back the Name That Molina game on Baseball Tonight. What are Benji and Jose up to right now?
You got anything to add on the Cardinals?
No.
All right. Well, that takes us to the end of our AL and NL Central Division previews.
Mercifully.
Yes. As I mentioned at the top of the show, next week, Eric will be back with us, and he will be hosting as we break down the off-season moves from the 10 teams in the AL and NL West divisions. Yes. We expect for that show to be next Wednesday, March 20th, but be sure to follow us on Facebook, follow us on X at SportsBallers18 to keep up, or Twitter, whatever. You can keep up with when we plan to do that show if that changes. The week after that, we will do our postseason picks and awards. We'll update our divisional expectations based on any spring training injuries or other roster moves that happen between our division previews and that show. But that'll be Wednesday, March 27th. We are pretty committed to that date because that is the day before opening day.
Yes, indeed.
And we are very excited for that. We are excited for the start of fantasy baseball. Evan, join the league.
Oh, yeah. May have to eat some dinner.
You're going to forget.
Probably.
Definitely. But I guess that kind of wraps things up. So unless there are any late breaking news, any Woj bombs, any Passan bombs or Passan bombs.
I don't see anything. The Wizards game started.
Are they winning?
I don't know.
They're on a 2-game winning streak, aren't they?
I don't
Or
know.
have they lost since then?
Probably.
Let's see. Wizards schedule. They are playing against the Rockets right now. They are in the second quarter, losing by 4. And yes, their 2-game win streak is over. They lost to the Grizzlies on Tuesday by 12.
Okay. All right. Well.
Oh wow, that ended a pretty long streak of them scoring 100 points in a game.
Oh. Okay.
We can talk to Eric about that next week, maybe. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and start wrapping up tonight's show. If you have stuck with us thus far, we thank you for your listenership. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being with us this week on this show, episode 274. If you like what you've heard, you can hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast app you are listening on, or if you are listening live on YouTube, you can hit subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you always know when we are going live. You can follow us on Twitter at SportsBallers18. We are also on there individually. I am at Corey Puffett. Evan is at Evan_Ash13. And even though he's not here, I'll go ahead and plug Eric's at Quagmire67. In addition to wherever you are listening to the show on right now, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. You can email us, thesportsballers@gmail.com, if you have mailbag questions or any ideas of topics that you'd really like to hear our thoughts on. We are always open to being prompted by any potential listeners on things for us to cover. Before we get out of here, any shout outs, Evan?
Not really, but a little shout out. Something I didn't know was happening. In Major League Baseball, they're having the spring breakout games in spring training. So like all the teams will have their top prospects all playing in the same game in spring training. So I just thought that was an interesting idea. And honestly, I wish I had come up with it because, I feel like I should be the next commissioner of baseball.
Can't be any worse than the person we have right now.
No.
My shout out this week is to the DeMatha basketball team. After what we all kind of saw as being a fairly disappointing end to the regular season, had a 6-game losing streak at one point in conference play. That was it was a long streak. It was 28 days between wins at one point. They ran through the Maryland Private School State Tournament and finished it off with a double overtime win over the number 1 seed in the tournament, Bullis. DeMatha was the 6th seed coming in. They beat Bullis in 2 overtimes at Eleanor Roosevelt over the weekend. So really happy for them. It's a fairly young team. A lot of the players are going to be coming back, including pretty much everybody who played meaningful minutes during that private school state tournament. Everybody is set to come back next year. So I know that was a really good way for Mike Jones and the players to finish off the year, build some confidence going into next season. So definitely wanted to give a shout out to them.
Shout out to Eric, who's on the mend.
Yes. Yes. Like I said, medical procedure earlier this week, but he is doing fine. He is recovering well. Just out of an abundance of caution, didn't want to potentially, bust a gut or anything, laughing during our show because of how hilarious we can be. I will say today was a little more of a tame show, I think.
I guess. I don't know. Maybe we're just sedated by these Central Division rosters.
It's probably a little bit of that too. Maybe a lot of that. One last reminder, and then I'm going to let everybody go. Join our bracket challenges. Find the links on our Twitter page and on our Facebook page for both the men's and women's tournaments. Both of them should be very exciting, and we are really looking forward to filling out our brackets next week and getting that show on the road. So as we get this show off the road, I will thank everybody one more time for listening and joining us for this 274th episode of the Sports Bars podcast. We'll be back with you next week with our AL and NL West breakdowns. And until then, take care.